Welcome, everybody, to the second in our back to school series with NCHE. Our webinars welcome everybody back to the new school year. And tonight we're going to talk about educating and commemorating as we look toward the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence and all that that means for how we approach this topic in our classroom. That's in 2026. So we've got plenty of time to think and plan. So we brought together a number of folks here to talk to you all tonight about the ways that they're doing this sort of work in their states and then on a more national level. So before we get started, just a couple of quick introductions. My name is Jessica Ellison. I am the Executive Director of the National Council for History Education. I am calling in here from beautiful Twin Cities area, Minnesota. I've got two of my wonderful colleagues here, Shauna Liverati from Florida and Kathleen Barker from Michigan. They are the grant directors for two of our two Department of Education grants. And so a lot of their teachers are here, which is wonderful. We also have representation from two different state programs. We have North Carolina. We have Leray Umfleet here from North Carolina, and we've got three folks from Colorado. We have Katie, Stephanie, and Judy joining us from Colorado. And we also have Madeline Rosenberg from AASLH, which is the American Association for State and Local History. So we are going to get started and talk about the more national celebrations and commemorations and thinking about the 250th. And then we're going to start in North Carolina to start with our original 13 colonies. And then we're going to move out west and talk about, what happens if you live in a state that wasn't part of the 13 colonies? Well, guess what? You can still commemorate. So please make sure that as you're thinking of questions that you're putting them in the Q&A and not in the chat, because it will get lost in the chat as you all engage and talk. And we'd love to hear conversations that you're having in the chat with each other. But please put any specific questions that you have for our guests in the Q&A and we will address them at the end. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Madeline Rosenberg from AASLH. So Madeline, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Just bear with me. I'm going to share my screen and then we can dive in. All right. Hopefully everyone can see that. Please put a note in the chat if you're having trouble seeing my slides. But thank you, Jessica. I'm Madeline Rosenberg. I'm the Commemorate Foundation Semi-Quincentennial Manager for the American Association for State and Local History. And I'm so pleased to be here this evening. And thank you all for attending this webinar. So for those of you who don't know, AASLH is the National Professional Association for Public History Institutions and the staff and volunteers who make them run. We provide professional development, resources, guidance, advocacy, publications, and research, and a sense of connectedness to over 5,500 institutional and individual members, as well as leadership for history practitioners and organizations nationally. Today, what I'd like to do is share with you a sense of excitement, optimism, and a little bit of urgency about the US 250th anniversary or semi-quincentennial. Above all, I'm going to emphasize the need to articulate a bold vision for what we consider a once-in-a-generation event. So for many history practitioners and educators, and I'm guessing some of you on the Zoom call, the 250th may not be on your radar. And if it is, it might be unclear what planning for it should entail. How do you commemorate the 250th? And how do you mark the anniversary in a way that will be meaningful for varied audiences and relevant to your students? How does it fit in with the rest of the many aspects and areas of content that you cover? We believe that the answer to those questions lies in thinking broadly and creatively about the 250th. It's an occasion that calls on us to explore our country's past, not just in the Revolutionary era, but beginning millennia before 1776 and continuing all the way to the present. We have to ensure that Americans of all ages and all backgrounds and in all locations see themselves in history and appreciate its relevance. And we think that the 250th can help us show everyone not just that history matters, but that their history matters. So from AASLH's perspective, we have two great opportunities here. First, to promote a full, honest telling of American history as we continue to make progress towards a more perfect union. And second, to attract interest, investment, and support for the history field, and by extension, civics and education, strengthening these areas for generations to come. So before sharing some ideas about how we get to that vision, I'm going to offer just some very brief framing thoughts about the nature of anniversaries, and then I'm going to give you a sense of what's going on with the 250th across the country. So let's take a moment to think about the significance of anniversaries. Why do they matter, and what are the opportunities and limitations they present? So on the one hand, anniversaries are fantastic opportunities to draw attention and provide focus. They encourage us to reckon and reflect, and they can inspire. They also are a chance to identify and advance priorities, to sort of set an agenda and say, this is what we want to achieve. And they provide a great opportunity to look at our dominant narratives and say, how can these be more accurate and more inclusive? And finally, they can often help promote high expectations and develop a lot of momentum for change, which can be great. There's obviously another side to all of this. Anniversaries can be divisive. Rather than being inevitable or handed down from on high, anniversaries are the result of people, and often people in positions of power, making decisions about what we remember as a society, when and how. And it's understandable that these choices about what we should remember inspire different feelings in different people. And even if we all agree about what to commemorate, people might have different priorities for an anniversary, and they might be in conflict with one another. In addition, if we're going to talk about, revisiting dominant narratives, not everyone agrees, as we all know, about whether they should be revised, or if they should be, how they could be revised. And finally, even if you have momentum, even you have a lot of energy and enthusiasm, it doesn't always mean there are resources, and it doesn't always mean that the avenues of power are going to align with what your priorities are. So all of this is true for the 250th, and I just mentioned this because I think keeping these factors in mind can help us be more intentional and strategic in our preparations for the anniversary, whether you're an educator or a museum professional. So what's actually going on in terms of preparations? Some of you may know this, but formal efforts began at the national level in 2016 when Congress established the U.S. Semi-Quincentennial Commission, which is made up of 8 members of Congress, 16 private citizens, and several heads of major federal agencies. The commission then created the America 250 Foundation, which is its nonprofit partner, and it has the staff to carry out the commission's vision. So relatively recently, both the commission and foundation have undergone leadership changes and restructuring. Rosie Rios, who is a former treasurer of the US, has become chair of the commission. And this past July 4th, she unveiled her plan, which identified broad avenues by which all Americans and organizations are invited to participate. I think it's worth mentioning that America 250's ultimate vision from the beginning has been that the 250th will be decentralized and happen at the grassroots level. So there's not likely to be sort of a national plan that's handed down from the federal level. They have reached out to tribal organizations and to all 56 states and territories and a host of other local and state and national organizations. And their hope is that each state and territory will establish its own planning commission. So what's going on at the state level? Hopefully, as you can see on this map, there are about 37 states who have created commissions or similar entities to lead planning. And there's action pending in about another half-dozen states. Approaches vary wildly from state to state, but we're thrilled to see this progress, and we're hoping that this number keeps growing. If you're interested in finding out whether your state has a commission or planning body, and we encourage you to do so, you can visit the AASLH website where we have a list. We have links to their websites if they have a web presence. So that's what's happening logistically in terms of planning at the national and state level. And I know you'll hear a lot more about case studies from different states in a little bit. But I want to just circle back to that vision for the 250th that AASLH has been developing before discussing some resources we've created to help make the most of 2026. So since 2016, we have been a driving force for a commemoration that advances a full picture of American history and solidifies the role of museums and historic sites as vital institutions. One key area of our efforts has been working collaboratively to set a field-wide vision for this anniversary, which you can see on the slide. So as we see it, as I said at the beginning, the 250th is a vital opportunity to help American society progress towards justice through an inclusive approach to history and to strengthen the history field by attracting interest and investment. And I just want to take a minute to emphasize these two pillars. First, that the 250th will provide all Americans the chance to encounter stories from the full sweep of our shared history, showcasing a vision of the American past in which everyone sees themselves represented. Highlighting histories that reflect the country's diversity, both past and present, can provide a more widely shared understanding of the nation's history. And this fuller vision of the past can inform contemporary challenges to help us continue making progress towards, as I said, that more perfect union. And second, we think the 250th can strengthen the history field. The anniversary offers a rare chance to invest in the institutions and people that make up our historical infrastructure, ensuring that our stories and objects and documents are preserved for generations to come. The lead up to 2026 is a chance to prioritize funding for history and civics and museums and libraries and education in a way that can have an impact long after the 250th has ended. It's a major opportunity, in particular, for supporting the work of your local small institutions. We think history organizations can re-envision their relationships to their communities, including their schools, and demonstrate their impact, making themselves attractive to new sources of investment as well. So this is a really big picture, right? It's very ambitious. How can we make it a reality? We've been working on programs and tools to help with just that. And I will say most of our resources are geared directly towards history organizations, museums, and historical societies. But I do want to mention a few that I think might be relevant for those in the audience today. So it's no secret that anniversaries, as I was saying earlier, invite different opinions. And this is particularly true in a time of heated debates about the past, and particularly true, we think, for the 250th. So one tool you might find useful is the final report and recommendations of the Reframing History Project, which was funded by the Mellon Foundation. This was a 2-year deep dive research effort to understand how Americans think about history and how our field can more effectively explain history's value. Along with the report, we released a toolkit for implementing specific road-tested strategies to help the community, the history community, more effectively communicate with the public. So I have a QR code there to the toolkit. You may find this toolkit useful in communicating with colleagues or students or parents or other stakeholders about the work that you do. So I encourage you to check it out. Also on the theme of navigating conversations about history in a time of extreme polarization, we're planning a virtual summit for early next year. Today's hyper-polarized environment poses profound challenges to doing history. And while research shows that there is actually broad public support for a full and honest portrayal of American history, there are also fundamental disagreements that persist. So how can history doers navigate disagreements about the past and build on areas of consensus that we know exist from research? This is going to be a 2-day sort of mini conference that will explore recent research and emerging strategies to help history doers better operate amid today's fractious discourse, while considering the role and our role in identifying common ground and connecting past and present. So that will be on February 8th and 9th of 2024. And if it seems like something that might be useful to all of you, we encourage you to keep an eye out for registration, which will probably open in early January. But I want to spend the rest of my time on our field guide, which hopefully will be useful as well. The Making History at 250 field guide for the semi-quincentennial was developed with funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities and in collaboration with leading scholars and museum professionals. It provides interpretive themes to connect local 250th planning to a cohesive national initiative. Crafted with direction from a diverse panel of 25 history leaders from across the US, each of the guiding themes is broken out into specific questions to help shape planning. And any of these themes could be used to help spark exhibitions or lesson plans or community conversations or a history project. So as you can see on the slide, the themes are unfinished revolutions, power of place, we the people, American experiment, and doing history. Our hope is that the guide's themes will create a more widely shared story about American history, one that acknowledges its many tensions and ambiguities and informs our present and future. The themes in the guide, I should know, also do align with the plans laid out by America 250 and other major initiatives, which lends unity to what, again, will be a largely grassroots decentralized commemoration. And I think I have a QR code for this one as well. And it's also on our website. So by using the guide in your work, you would potentially be connecting to thousands of other planners nationwide. We've distributed over 30,000 hard copies of this guide and digitally even more. There's power in working together and using a shared vocabulary in planning our commemorations. So we encourage you to use the guide to find connections with perhaps your course content that will highlight the relevance of the 250th for everyone. And above all, we're hoping that it will help you envision the kind of transformative impact this anniversary can have on our field and on our society. So before I close, I'm just going to zero in on one theme in the guide as an example. So let's look at power of place. Place offers a powerful lens through which we can view the past. It challenges us to think beyond modern political boundaries and to consider the full history of the space we now call the United States. A deep engagement with place enables us to reconsider significant questions about our history, from Indigenous peoples' past and present connections with American spaces to a community's relationships with the use of land, waterways, and natural resources, to the profound and unequal consequences of imperial expansion and colonization across the continent. This theme encourages us to re-examine ideas about our natural and built environments and to reorient when and where we find our country's history. So as you plan for the 250th, or if you're thinking about ways to integrate it into your course content, some of the questions you could ask yourself or perhaps students are, and you see them on the slide, what was happening in your community during the revolution? How has your place changed over time? Who has lived here and how have they experienced major events in the past? How did the natural environment shape past events such as settlement and migration, imperialism and expansion, economic development and innovation? And how did those events affect the environment in turn? How can Indigenous peoples' past and present connection to places and environments inform our understanding of historical developments and the present day? And what places are typically preserved for their historic value? What other stories could be told there? So I want to close by just emphasizing again that the 250th is a chance for Americans of all beliefs and experiences to engage critically with our nation's past and understand its connections to the present. The next 3 years are for all of us a chance to prepare and think big and look to the future. And I urge all of us to be thinking ahead. While there were undoubtedly flaws in the bicentennial commemoration in 1976, I think it's worth remembering that there was also a huge flood of general public interest in American history, in genealogy. There was a broadening attention to diverse histories and a deeper grassroots appreciation for local history. There was the creation of thousands of local history projects and organizations. There was also the emergence of the formal public history movement itself. So I'd ask all of you, could the legacy of the 250th be even bigger? What could emerge from this anniversary and what groundwork can we lay for the future? Who can we reach who we're not reaching already? In many ways, 2026 is going to be a bit of an inflection point for this country, with the 5th anniversary of January 6th and the 25th anniversary of 9/11 bookending the semi-quincentennial. So how can we take advantage of the focus and reflection and momentum afforded by major commemorations to help move society further and strengthen history work and education for all? So this is a rare, once-in-a-generation opportunity to renew public and we think student engagement with history and to bolster understanding of what history is. And we think with all the creativity that you all and other history workers are pouring into your work every day, we think it's achievable. So thank you for all that you do, and I'm happy to hear the other presentations and be chatting with you guys at the end. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Madeline. There's some chatter in the chat about the great questions that you posed, and I think that we can see the connections already. So let's move into our first state representative, and that's Lee Ray Umfleet from North Carolina. So Lee Ray, I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Great, thank you. I'm working on sharing my screen. I think I have done everything I need to do. Can you see everything?
Yes, we see it.
Great. Wonderful. So I'm Lee Ray Umfleet. I'm one of two that are leading the effort for North Carolina in our commemorative work. And the reason we're doing it this way is because North Carolina always has to be different. And this case study will explain to you what we're doing in North Carolina and how we're able to accomplish these things. The North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources is a cabinet level agency. And I work for this department along with my colleague, Sarah Kuntz, who's also our state archivist. And we've been planning the commemoration since 2018. We've had a draft plan for commemorative activities by the 2019 period, and then COVID came along and we put a pause on all the things that we had talked about doing. But after COVID started to recede, we picked back up and we've been working diligently on lots and lots of programming, not only for special events to commemorate our place as one of the original 13 colonies, but also our unique nature of North Carolina and our goal, which is to have a robust and comprehensive and inclusive statewide program that has online resources, does educational outreach, special events, exhibitions that will be traveling around. We have an Airstream that's going to be wrapped with our good logos, and we'll be able to take the history on the road to our trails and waysides. And we even have symphony performances that are scheduled out because the North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources is so unique in that we have the best of all the fun stuff in North Carolina: arts, culture, history, nature. We have 27 state historic sites, 6 regional history museums, 30 some state parks, the North Carolina Zoo, aquariums, and we're able to pull in all of those pieces of us through our colleagues to create some comprehensive programming across all sectors. In fact, the symphony performances that we're hosting will be a new commemorative legacy item, which will be a performance written and performed by traditional Native American groups and artists in North Carolina. And then we'll have free performances all over the state. So we seek to have a balanced commemoration in North Carolina, and many of the things that I'll talk about echo some of the very conversations that Madeline was discussing in her presentation. We've had these conversations within our own department, and all of that informs the decisions we've made to create the programming that we have. This is a really nice quote from our local Raleigh newspaper. History is not an unbroken march, and it's not doom and despair. It's a complicated mess. And we have a sense of curiosity about where we came from, and sharing that information is an act of civic pride. So we are hoping that even though we're looking at difficult times with politics and economics and national and international kerfuffles, we in North Carolina and the United States have an opportunity to embrace the good and the bad and the ugly in our history, and have a comprehensive overarching understanding for our residents. So to do that, we have 2 thematic concepts. One is revolutionary NC. That's the history of the revolution in North Carolina, but also we can talk about revolutionary thought. And what does that mean? Protests are revolutionary thought. And that's not just the protests of the Tea Parties, but also George Floyd protests or the civil rights or women's suffrage. And then blending into that is when are we us? And you'll notice the us is capitalized. And so it's when are we the United States? And it's asking us to think about exploring the concepts of freedom, civic responsibility, overcoming challenges, and leaning into the ideals of democracy. And quite frankly, when I've discussed when are we us, WAWU in our working groups, the folks from other non-13 colonies and even some of the original 13 colonies really think that this is a unique way to think about leaning into what it means to be an American and a resident of the state of North Carolina or Colorado or Ohio. And are we there yet? Are we that more perfect union? Or are we still a work in progress? And that's not for us to tell you. It's for you to ask your students, and then we all work through it together. So again, we're looking at thoughtful inclusivity. We're re-researching everything we thought we knew about the Revolutionary War, because the narrative that came out in 1976 only reflected certain parts of our history, and African American patriots and loyalists weren't discussed. American Indian patriots and loyalists weren't discussed. So we are re-researching everything, because the power of place, the pride and understanding of where you are in the state, can really play a role in improving your outlook in your community and your involvement in historic preservation, or in the work that you might do to preserve the history of a local cemetery. So we're asking and challenging teachers and students and families to think all through these various pieces. So we also developed some themes, just like Madeline described for AASLH. Our team came up with some of these themes at the same time that AASLH was working on them. If I had known that they were doing all that work, we would have just used theirs. But we came up with our own visions of freedom, gathering of voices, and common ground. And these reflect some North Carolina things too. We understand that the making and remaking of America through visions of freedom is that the revolution of the 18th century was the start of a continuous process to seek and envision true freedom. We highlight movements that make us a better version of ourselves and our state, nation, civil rights, women's suffrage, scientific and industrial developments. It's all grown who and what we are as North Carolinians as we push for the promises of the revolution. We also realize that no one voice can tell the story of the Revolutionary War in North Carolina's history. And we hope that these historic voices that we bring to light, both ones we've heard before and ones we didn't know existed, will inspire others to share their narrative of our collective story in the United States. And plus, we understand that this common ground piece is very important. We all should recognize that we're students of history, we're witnesses too, and we're also makers. Our spaces of reverence, like battlefields, historic spaces, the natural world, are for any one given person a place of happiness or painful memories, evidence of struggle, rebirth, and growth. But all of these places carry stories of collective struggle, creativity, and humanity's relationships to one another. We come together on common ground to find connections and ways to make our state and nation a better place for the future. So, blending into this for you as educators, we talk about hard history in North Carolina. We have to discuss enslavers, the enslaved, free people of color, American Indians who were displaced, American Indians who were victims of genocide almost during the Revolution, and those whose ancestors took part in that genocide. So we call this hard history. And we work with the North Carolina Carolina K-12 organization. It's within the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in the humanities department. And they teach teachers how to do this hard history. And they give them continuing ed credits, lesson plans, curriculum materials, articles of all kinds, and they have a searchable database online by topic, place, event, things like that. So it's a wonderful resource for us here in North Carolina, but it can really be used and adapted anywhere in the country. So hard history is, teachers worry about how to cover hard history, whether because it's hard and how it might impact students, how students, parents, politicians might respond, or due to the fact that it can be so complicated. You might not feel that you have the content knowledge yourself because you weren't given a full picture of the history that you're trying to teach in your own learning experiences. So through some of our programs, through our curriculum materials, we're enabling and giving the tools to the teachers to be able to work through some of this hard history. And here's some more information that my friend Christy Norris, who works in Carolina K-12. She couldn't attend tonight, but she really gives us some solid ways to focus and frame hard history. So Christy and I worked along with our education committee to have our inaugural 250 North Carolina teacher workshop. And it was called The Fire for Freedom, North Carolina's African Americans in the Revolutionary War. We learned about why African American men would choose to fight for a loyalist British cause, or why maybe they decided to become patriots, and why fight for a potential country that is not going to grant you your freedom. And so we had professors and scholars and activists who all spoke and worked with the teachers. And we also had a performance by Dr. Sonny Kelly. And Dr. Kelly's performance was a one-man show where he has videos and montages in the background of his screen, and he's portraying the experiences, documented experiences of Black veterans from the Revolutionary War all the way to the current wars in the Middle East. And he's a veteran himself, and so he speaks with an authentic voice. And his grandfather was also in World War II. He had another ancestor in World War I. So he truly has that long history that can show that, just like American Indians want to be known as they're here, their history is important. Same goes with these African American stories that we're looking at. And I'm going to try to play a clip of one of the montages that plays. It's only a minute and a half, so.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the whole of the brave?
So that is the closing montage of Sonny Kelly's one-man performance. That's his wife, who is also a veteran, singing the music. So it's very moving. We have our next performance of Sonny's work at a church in Durham on Thursday night. And I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. The feedback we received from the teachers at the workshop was so overwhelmingly positive. They want him to come to all of their schools, which is physically impossible, but we're going to try to find some ways to break it apart in snippets. And so if a teacher wants to have a video clip for the Revolutionary War piece or the Civil War piece, we'll also have educational curriculum materials and activities to accompany that clip. And so that is really something unique that I feel like we're going to be offering for a long time through the commemoration. So other things that we're doing for our teachers in North Carolina, we've created a Freedom Fellows Teacher Advisory Board. They're going to identify for us gaps in curriculum, and then they're going to help us write those pieces of a curriculum to fill out those gaps. We're creating classroom posters with workshop materials and lesson plans to go with the posters. We're creating children's books and readers to go along with the children's books. Those children's books are reflecting actual history from North Carolina. We have one on the red wolf, which is an endangered species in North Carolina, and its experiences during the Revolution, because the wolf was all over the state and now it's endangered. One of the books is on the Edenton Tea Party and the protest of the ladies against the taxes. So we're doing a lot of different unique things within the big picture. Thousands and thousands of bookmarks have already been created. We have more future teacher workshops on a variety of topics, not just on African American stories, but there'll be American Indian stories and the stories of everyday people, regardless of race or color or gender, to tell the whole circuit of the revolution in North Carolina. And we're also attending several sessions of the North Carolina Social Studies Conference. That is an annual meeting of teachers and educators. And one thing we always try to do when we're on a national level is to remind everybody that the revolution happened everywhere. And it wasn't just in Boston and New York and in the New England area. North Carolina has a large state to represent, but we had activity in all of these campaign areas. And we want, at a Revolutionary War history level, local residents to understand that history happened in their area and that people were making life and death decisions based on an ideal for a new country that maybe wasn't perfect then and it isn't perfect now, but it's working towards that more perfect union. And finally, because I'm running close on my time, I give you our red wolf mascot. That's going to allow us to speak to natural world conservation, what endangered species there are here in North Carolina in the United States, and how humans and nature interact in the same space and impact each other. Our North Carolina Zoo is the largest habitat zoo in the world, and we have a pup program where we breed new babies for the red wolves, and they grow up independent and not dealing with very many humans, and then they're eventually released back out into the wild to repopulate areas where they were in decline. And everyone in North Carolina is getting into the spirit of things, including our pets. That's Ethan and Floof, who aren't very happy about wearing these little bonnets that we made for them with the curly Q wigs, and also rescue animals like raccoons. And here is a QR code for our website. These are our contact information. We can share any of this with you at any point. And I hope that I have given you some good information to learn and brainstorm about how North Carolina's examples can feed into your state. So thank you.
I mean, I was expecting to see a lot of things, Lee Ray, and one of them was not raccoons and wigs. And so I'm super excited about this. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I
Thank
chase
you.
around critters and put little wigs on them and take pictures.
I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, now I will hand it over to our friends in Colorado. Katie Roach, I'm going to pass it right over to you.
Hi, I'm very sad that we don't have pictures of deer and elk here with 14er crocheted caps because that's my next step.
We
So
need to make one for the buffalo out front of History Colorado.
Oh, we do. Leray, if you crocheted those, I will send you some dimensions and we will put one on our bronze statue outside of History Colorado, and I will send you a picture.
Oh my, I might be able to. I'm trying to grow the pattern for dogs now.
This would be pretty big, but I'm going to jump right into it. I'm Katie Roach. I am the program director for the America 250 Colorado 150 Commission. I am joined here with Dr. Stephanie Hartman. She is a social studies content specialist for the Colorado Department of Education, as well as one of our commissioners serving on Colorado's Commemorative Commission. Also joined by Judy Hoffmeister, who is a dance, drama, and theater arts consultant for the Colorado Department of Education as well. So I am going to share my screen in a moment. I am just going to provide some background information about my role and the commission's general goals here before I turn it over to Stephanie as our commissioner, who is an expert on education. And I will point out as well that Colorado just formed our commission in 2022. And so for all of you teachers, this is an opportunity for you to see the fact that we're really still in the planning process here for how we're looking at education and how we are going to approach education. But I will let Stephanie and Judy dive into that. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. And all right, can everybody see it okay? All right, Judy's
Yes.
giving me a thumbs up. All right, so with that, is this as well? Hang on one second. I'm going to move this over here. So our commission is a little different. I don't know how many of you are familiar, but Colorado is the centennial state. So we have the unique opportunity to commemorate our 150th anniversary the same year that the nation celebrates the 250th anniversary. We have really taken this to mean that these twin opportunities will present the people and citizens of Colorado with an opportunity to really look very deeply at our complete past. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to really fully examine what makes Colorado, Colorado, and ultimately how we fit into that national story. Very briefly, I will share that we were created by legislation. I know Madeline spoke a little bit to how some states are forming these commissions. Governor Polis created our commission in 2022, expanded our commission from 11 seated commissioners to 15. We're still waiting on those new appointments, but we are housed within History Colorado. So History Colorado is our state historical agency, and we are a state agency. So while we don't have a terribly large budget, we are housed here through and funded through the state. And very specifically, Colorado's legislation in the creation of our commission, and I'm just going to read this to you, but it is over here on the right, is pretty unique in that we, from the very beginning, identified that we are taking a very heavy look at previously underrepresented histories in our state. So we are seeking to identify, celebrate, and build knowledge around the history of Black communities, Indigenous communities, communities of color, women, and people with disabilities, and development in the history of the United States and the state of Colorado. But that also does include the history that predates the founding of our nation and state. So again, speaking to Colorado's and several other states here, I'm sure that our challenge is that we really aren't a revolutionary state. So we are trying to find the ways in which we can highlight that Colorado's story is the story of the United States. And so placing that story and history of the American West and the things that we have accomplished here, even predating the nation, and how that really serves to identify Colorado's communities as a whole. We are also made up, I won't go through all of these because I'd love to turn it over to Stephanie and Judy and talk a little bit more about history, but I do want to point out that our commissioners are also, the makeup of our commission is unique in that our commissioners are representing various communities and state agencies and interests of the state of Colorado. So for example, we have Dr. Stephanie Hartman here representing the Colorado Department of Education. Several of our other commissioners are representing specific communities throughout our state. So we have representatives representing the Latino community, the Black community. We are still awaiting our tribal appointments from the Ute Mountain Ute tribe as well as the Southern Ute tribe. In addition to that, we recognize that in Colorado, 48 tribes have called and still call Colorado home. So the commission is currently weighing how to manage those state-to-state relationships, even though the Ute, Mountain Ute, and Southern Ute will have official seats on our commission as well. In addition to some of these communities, we've got representatives from Colorado Tourism, representative from History Colorado as well. So we also have by legislation been charged to create an advisory panel. This is one of the ways in which we're very much hoping to reach our local communities. We are using Colorado Tourism's view of our state in our Colorado Tourism at regions. And so we have placed and identified at least one advisory panel member per region. They are currently focusing on creating local organizing committees. Those local organizing committees are being encouraged to really dig deep at a grassroots level to identify the ways in which local communities can take part in this commemoration. Our commission, much like Lorraine's view and vision for North Carolina, will take a look at several statewide legacy programs. However, we are very much actively encouraging local communities to highlight and amplify their local history as well, and knowing that all of that will really serve to create this large statewide commemoration. We have also determined that our mission and purpose is to celebrate Colorado by acknowledging the completeness of our shared history. Please note that we did have quite a lot of conversation around the word celebrate, and that our representatives representing communities of color on our commission all did feel that there were opportunities to celebrate individual communities, even while acknowledging hard history as well. That we will honor that which makes Colorado unique. And again, I'm hearing this very common theme that we will all do this all in the effort to strive toward a more perfect union. We will take a look at various historical activities. We will have an emphasis on preservation, on arranging public ceremonies, but very specifically related here, this is in our bill that we will promote and create new scholarship. And so with that, I will launch this over to Stephanie Hartman. Stephanie, please just let me know when you want me to change slides for you.
Okay. So in statute now, there are two main things that we have to look at. One is educational opportunities so that our kids can learn more about not just what's been happening nationally, but also locally. And then the promotion of scholarship and research that illuminates the history of the American West. So we've really tried to align, since that's what's in statute or in law, tried to align the commission's goals with those two particular statements. So we are going to be partnering with social studies organizations around the state, as well as Colorado teachers, to look at how we can best meet that law basically that's been established. One of the first places that we started, I'll get there in just a minute, sorry. Reverse one thing. Go ahead to the next slide, Katie. So it was very interesting that, and maybe fortuitous, I guess, that we just finished revising our social studies standards in 2022. And in 2019, there was a law passed that states that the history and civil government of the United States, you all can read, but now have to look at social history, culture, and social contributions of minorities, including, and you can see the affinity groups listed there. This law was already in the books, but it was expanded. So that gives us a lot of kind of clout in the education world to say, these materials and things that we're going to be developing and this work that we're going to be doing aligns with our standards that have just been revised. We're also including student voice in planning for these educational activities and looking at other partnerships. And in a minute, Judy's going to talk to you about one of the partnerships that she and I are working on. And in the meantime, Katie, go ahead and go to the next slide, Katie. Katie and I are working with the Director of Education at History Colorado, our historical society, to really look at what are the programs that History Colorado is already doing and how can our commission work, specifically around education, kind of dovetail into that, because the infrastructure already exists. So we talked about how do you teach national history through hyperlocal history. We are going to be putting together an advisory committee that is representative not only of current classroom teachers, but also some district coordinators, etc., to really say, okay, what really matters? What are the things that we need our kids to know? Colorado is very, very different than some states that I'm familiar with on the East Coast, from the sense that our states our standards are not content driven per se, like they are in other states. So because that broadness kind of exists, being able to identify those pieces of relevant history is going to be really important. So looking at creating learning materials, one of the pieces that we're talking about is, I taught US history for years. I taught US history, but never connected it to the state that I was teaching in. And so I've been working with, and I've been talking to April and Katie about, how do we localize national history by talking about, for example, we had in Denver, we had KKK marches, and members of the state and city government were members of the KKK. And yet, when we teach that, we teach it about something that happened over there, right? Someplace else. So we're looking to develop that, and then hopefully put together a hub where all of these lessons and resources are going to be housed. And so I'm going to turn it over to Judy so that she can talk to you a little bit about the partnerships. Go ahead and change the slide, Katie. The partnerships and the ideas that we have moving forward with the arts.
Well, hello. I hope everybody can hear me. As we have said earlier, I'm Judy Hoffmeister, the Dance and Drama Content Specialist at Colorado Department of Education. Stephanie had gotten in touch with me a few months ago, and we started talking about ideas of how we can bring Colorado's really rich history of the arts into this celebration for the 150 years, and how we can use student voice through the arts. And I started thinking, my little Rolodex went in my head, and started thinking about ideas of what we could do. And I thought, how can we marry the research piece of this with, the creative piece of this? And so I thought, it might be kind of fun to devise a playwriting contest where the students are researching about Colorado history, researching about the characters in Colorado history, and sit down and write one-act plays or monologues of the historical characters and in Colorado history. These would be student-written, student-directed, and student-performed pieces that we can incorporate into different activities or different performances throughout the course of the celebration, or the time frame of when we culminate all of the when we're celebrating the 150th year. From the performances from historical or current art groups, we can actually even just build a whole night or several nights or afternoons even of performances that will reaching out to our partners with various art groups, such as the Denver Center of Performing Arts, or we have the Denver Center is a very localized in the Denver area. It's our Broadway. It's Denver's Broadway, where we bring in different shows and so on and so forth at the Denver Center of Performing Arts. And they also have an education component where they do the playwriting and such, so they could actually help the students, and we can put together, we can structure this particular contest. But also we have a group that is a nonprofit that is called Think 360 Arts for Learning. And they can also be a part of the partners that work within these performances and these activities that we have that are culminating around the 150th birthday. We can focus on the progression of Colorado history across multiple eras in dance, music, and student plays, with an art gallery in the lobby. It was kind of something that I was seeing. That was kind of my vision of it. It can include Indigenous dance and art, square dance and folk music, big band and swing dance, and jazz was a huge, there's a rich history. Glenn Miller was from Fort Morgan, Colorado, so it's kind of fun to pull that in there. And of course, we've got Unsinkable Molly Brown. So we can take some performances possibly from that. Student play performances, we can sprinkle those in from the contest, the playwriting contest that we have put together, and then possible performances by current arts groups. So we really get a whole span of, you know, where Colorado was and have, you know, gone through the history and where we are now and where we're going in the future. So those were my thoughts.
So thank you all. I know that Jessica wants a little bit of time for questions, so I will just leave this here. Feel free to take a photo, but also, you know, you can absolutely find us, or Jessica is welcome to connect us with you if you'd like to in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Katie and Stephanie and Judy. I appreciate all of these great ideas. And we've had a lot of chatter and some questions that were answered already in the chat. So make sure, folks, that you're looking in the Q&A if you have questions. There's some links in the chat about some other resources. We do have two questions, and it looks like one of them has already been answered in the chat. Lee Ray Matima, if that's, I hope you pronounced that properly, wants to know if you could share the contact information for the video.
Yes. I clicked answer live, and then I put the link in her other request. It's through Carolina K-12, Christy Norris. And y'all were so lucky. You got the sneak peek at the first iteration of that montage. And Sonny had a version of that when he worked through the presentation for our teachers. And because tomorrow night, Thursday nights will be for the general public, they've reworked the montage again, and y'all were the first ones to see it. So yay. But I put the link to Carolina K-12 in the Q&A section.
Great. And then one more question, Lee Ray. When does the North Carolina traveling program start? And is there a map of where it goes? We have a couple of folks who were saying they want to come visit.
Well, come visit. Come on. So one thing I didn't put in my conversation earlier is that we are starting our commemoration on April 12th, 2024. So next year. And we're doing that so that we can build some awareness and understanding and hopefully get a groundswell of support. We are also working through all 100 of our counties with county committees to plan local events that are all theirs, that are unique to their community. And the April 12th event that we're doing is in Halifax, North Carolina, in Halifax County, right off of I-95 at the Virginia border. And the Halifax Resolves were signed in Halifax, and it was the first time that a colony had called for independence from Britain. And this is April 1776. The declaration is July 1776. And when North Carolina released their resolves, it sort of started a snowball effect. And so we're kicking off our commemoration in April, and then we'll be traveling all over the state for the next forever. Our commemoration runs through 2033, so I have job security. And but the schedule for the traveling exhibits, the symphony performances, and Sonny Kelly's performances are not laid in stone yet for half of 2024, moving into 2025. We are working on that now, and it will be on our website. So make sure that you go to our website, and I can put the link to our website back in the chat too.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Stephanie, I thought I saw that you unmuted there. Did you want to jump in with some last words?
Nope, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Okay.
My dog is staring at me like I'm so hungry.
Maybe
Sorry.
he needs a wig. He needs a crocheted wig. And
Definitely.
then he'll hear about that.
Lee Ray, you know we are all going to need one. So
Well, it's not a hard pattern, and so it's really quite easy. And I'm now trying to also try to figure out how to do a tricorn hat, because you got to have a hat at a jaunty angle on your cat.
Well, thank you all so much for being part of this conversation tonight. Madeline, thank you for coming and giving us the big picture from AASLH. Lee Ray, thanks for sharing what North Carolina is doing. And thank you to Katie, Stephanie, and Judy for sharing all the great stuff that Colorado is doing as well. So I am thrilled that you were all able to come, and I, in looking at that map, see that my own state has something in progress. Well, that has just lit a little fire, and I thought I saw some Floridians in the chat talking about they needed to get a commission as well. So thank you everybody for coming tonight, and we really appreciate it, and we hope to see you at our final webinar in the series on Thursday. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, thank you.